annual requirement is an annual number. Moving across there. So you'll see that the investment requirements fluctuate between 30 and 110 million in these 5-year bins. And this is based on the estimated life of the assets, but your projects can be planned out to smooth the spikes in capital requirements for each 5-year bid and change that to better reflect the actual projects that you would do in a year. Additionally, where applicable, lifecycle activities can push out replacement dates and lower the average annual requirements, like I showed you in that lifecycle strategy. Your staff already has lifecycle strategies in place based on some of the studies that they've had. Your road network, following the strategies that they have put in place, saves an estimated 5 million annually on your road network. So like I said, being very proactive. This is again where I'm getting into that information about the numbers. So the funding available is all regular and sustainable funding. One-time grants are not included as per OREG 58817 requirements. The financial strategy and its recommendations are based on the capital replacement rehabilitation needs required to maintain where you are right now. And as you establish your target or desired levels of service for 2025, the required capital investment and financial strategy may need to be revised. So right now, based on an average year, your historical values, your tax-funded infrastructure requirements are 7.6 million, and the rate-funded infrastructure requirements are 6.7. Over the last 3 years from 2022, the funding available is about 3.5 million for tax funded and 3.3 million for rate funded, with an average annual capital deficit of 4.1 and 3.4 million respectively. But again, this is only on regular and sustainable funding. And this is if you follow that plan of rehabilitation and replacement absolutely perfectly. So that's one thing that I do like to mention is, one, your available funding is already being shown at a lower value than it really is, because you're not considering funding that you do typically get, but you can't guarantee that you'll get it, so it's not included as your available funding. And then on the other side, you're not going to maintain those assets at a perfect level every time. As we've discussed with levels of service, there has to be some give and take. And so when we do the 2025 requirements, you're going to be looking at your target. So for example, if your average road network condition is at 70% and you're okay with maintaining 70%, then the requirements will lower to maintain that 70% average. So that average annual requirement will go down. So from both ends, your funding is higher than it looks and your average requirement will go down, and they'll come a little bit closer together. We can run a few scenarios when we do the 2025 to show what the annual requirements would be if you were to, say, raise your average condition or lower it or maintain where you are. So we'll get a little bit more in depth as we go, because like I said, it's a step-by-step process. We have to kind of move a little bit further ahead each time we continue on with the process. So that's where we are right now. We're just looking at where you are, and then for the next AMP, we'll be looking at where we want to go and how to get there. All right, so for our recommendations, overall, the tax-funded assets are currently 46.2% funded, and the rate-funded assets are 49.4% funded. Our financial strategy recommends an increase in taxes by 1.5% per year over 20 years, and rates by 2.0 and 1.7% for sanitary and water over the next 15 years. Adopting this AMP does not mean committing to these values. Additionally, this is, like I said, just looking at where you are and what you would have to do in order to fully fund yourselves based on taxes and rates and your guaranteed funding alone. It doesn't look at pulling in any other types of funding, and it doesn't account for, the give and take that levels of service has to go through. That whole process will be engaging in that throughout the 2025 AMP. So we're just getting to our starting point, and by no means are we saying that you have to commit to these numbers. They're just a starting point for us to look at, and we'll be adjusting those as we go. So in terms of asset management, we recommend continuous refinement of your asset inventory data, of course. Accurate data is central to good asset management. Accurate in-service dates, condition, and replacement cost information is especially important. Your staff has a fairly comprehensive inventory, and the next stage will be to incorporate updates after the 2022 year end that was used for this A&P and plan their proposed levels of service. Like I said, your staff has been moving ahead with a lot of different studies and plans and really getting a handle on your asset management. You're ahead of the game as far as the majority of my clients. Additionally, the percent funded, even when considering the fact that you're only looking at consistent funding, you're ahead of the game a bit there too. So overall, you're in a very good standing. And I only see you guys improving as you move forward. So then the next step, evaluating and updating your strategy. So we'll review and refine the risk and lifecycle models over time as new information becomes available or as we get further into refining the information. We'll update that as we go. For capital requirements, review future contracts and quotes to obtain and update replacement costs, ideally on an annual basis, so that you have a good idea of the actual replacement costs of your assets so that we can figure out your annual requirements. As I'm sure you're aware, the costs over the last few years have changed quite significantly. So making sure that we keep these values updated based on any quotes or projects that you're performing, that would be the best strategy to continue that moving forward. And regularly review short and long-term asset capital requirements and incorporate this information into budget deliberations. For the evaluation of levels of service, we're going to continue to collect the current levels of service across all your categories, but we are going to be moving into your 2025 levels of service for the proposed values, target values, whichever way you want to call it, and the logistics of implementing a plan to meet them. Both, like I said, in terms of the activities that you'll have to do to get there, as well as the costs associated. All right, so key takeaways. This is a 2024 compliant A&P. Further improvements are required for 2025. A&Ps are a snapshot in time. It's just based on current available data. It's a continuous process, and the A&P should be used to guide your decision making and kind of just be a centralized source of asset information and municipality practices. We want to take all of those different studies and reports and master plans and incorporate them onto the assets associated to your inventory so that we have a good idea of where you're standing with all of your assets as a whole. The A&P is also a communication tool for staff, council, and the public. So that is everything I have for you. Again, thank you for taking the time tonight. Does anyone have any questions?
A great presentation, Nikki. Thank you very much for it. Are there any questions from members of council? Oh, Councillor Vaughan, go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you, Nikki, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions about the financial percentages that were referenced in the report and referenced tonight in your snapshot presentation. Sure. So I think at the beginning of the report, it talked about our tax revenues being around 11.2 million, and that 1.6% per annum was required over the next 20 years. And then I see in the presentation tonight and in a staff report that it's actually mentioning 1.5% should be put away for the future and for each year for the next 20 years. And so what I guess I'm really asking here is that 1.5 or 1.6% meant to cover both operating requirements as well as capital asset requirements?
We are looking at capital only. That is the main consideration with the A&P. I will say that it does incorporate any debt that is currently underway. Once the debt has been realized, it would be reallocated to your funding. So we have reduced some numbers because of that. However, I have been made aware that after 2022, some changes have been made to the budget to focus on some other areas. And so I think that the values that we're using are a little bit underrepresentative of where you are right now. And so that tax increase would be lower based on your current budget, as well as when you consider the target levels of service when we get into those. So I wouldn't say that the 1.5% would need to be implemented. It does indicate doing that each year, increasing by 1.5%. But I think that where it's a broader overview of the assets until we really dig in for the 2025, that I would be not as I wouldn't be too concerned with the values that are given there. Because like I said, it's a very broad general overview of your finances. It doesn't dig in very deep, as it's just a snapshot from a couple of years ago. So at this point, I would say that the 2025 iteration would give you a much better picture and indication of the financial strategy moving forward.
Paula?
Yes, I do have a follow-up. So is that 1.5%, 1.5% increase over the capital we normally allocate for assets, or is that 1.5% over the tax revenue of 11.2 million? Like, what's the denominator that we're multiplying
Yeah.
this?
I get what you're saying. I'll pull up, I have your values and everything here. That would be on top of the 1.5% looks at the actual capital allocated to the asset category. But when we give you the percentage, that's looking at your entire tax revenue as a whole. So it's kind of looking at it, like I say, in two lenses. You're looking, just bring up the capital plan here for you to see. Oops. And like I said, I believe that the values have changed since then, that you've changed your budget a little bit. We based it all on 2022 actuals. So when we look here, we see your average annual investment that's required based on what's in the inventory right now. And then over here would be what is currently allocated from taxes. So when we calculate the amount that's required to change over time, that would be looking into what you would actually multiply the actual property taxation to increase the amount that's allocated to each of those tax funded asset categories. But again, like I say, this is a very general view of your finances. It doesn't get very in depth in terms of where do you have different types of funding coming in, where you could reallocate things, looking at the actual condition and levels of service that you want to maintain. This value will go down when you look at the actual levels of service, the target or proposed levels of service. The required amount will go down. And when you actually look at what you do have available, your funding will go up. And so this deficit is not going to be such a huge gap as it is here. So yeah, while it does say what you would have to put on top of the $11 million property taxation would be that 1.5%, I think it's a much higher number than we'll really be looking at when we dive in a little bit deeper in the next step.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Oak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation tonight. Nikki, just wondering the 2% for water and the 1.7 for sewer roughly, is that in addition? We've had a Watson study that had an increasing accelerator in there, and is that in addition to what we're already increasing our current capital rates?
No. And I did mean to mention that as we went through, so thank you for bringing that up. This is broad general overview of the water and wastewater. You guys have a dedicated water and sanitary report and master plan that you're going by. That is what we'll say is the ruling factor. We're going to go with those reports rather than the numbers in here. They've done a lot more analysis into the assets than this current iteration of the report. So that would be the better number to go by. This is not in addition to it. I would say you would do that instead of this for the water and the wastewater.
Follow up, Councillor Oak?
Thank you. And another question. So this report is based off of December of 2022 numbers and facilities, because I noted on page 70 on facilities, there was it listed the Dashwood Fire Hall twice, but it didn't mention the Exeter Pool in there under facilities, under recreation. And I just wondered, what are all the facilities in here when you're doing this this iteration of the asset management? Because there's some things that have changed, obviously, or been added or deleted. If you did it in 23, the Centralia Community Center is not there anymore either. So there's a number of changes going on. So I just wondered what snapshot this was from. So.
You're exactly right. That is from back then. Any changes since then haven't been implemented. We did have some of the building condition assessments submitted before we finished the report. So the ones that we did have were included, but not all of them have been. So that is another part that we want to really focus on for the 2025 is, like I said, your staff has been really proactive in moving towards getting the information of where you are so that you have a good solid foundation to move forward with. And while that is still underway, it's makes the picture that is in this report a little bit difficult to accurately represent, just because there are so many different things that are changing. We have some of the changes in there, not all of them, because we only used what we had at the time. So the 2025 iteration is going to be including all of these different reports and studies and assessments that are currently underway, and we'll probably be using the 2023 year end as we go forward. It depends on the timing of your audit, whether or not we use a 2023 year end or a 2024 year end for the report, because it's due by July 1st of next year. So we can move forward. But as you know, we're only midway through 2024, so we don't have all of your data for this year until the year is finished. So that is a very good point. We do have further information that's becoming available as time goes on, which we were aware of as we did this report. So yeah, we'll have a much better picture as we move forward with the next iteration.
Thank you, Nikki. Any other questions or comments for Nikki? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Great report, and we appreciate all you did on this and working with our staff. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
And I look to Ms. Masoul Carlson for the recommendation, please.
The South Huron Council receives a PSD citywide presentation regarding the asset management plan as presented by Nikki Pittman.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries to 7. Thank you. On to no 5, no 6, and we move on to number 7.1, please.
That South Huron Council adopts the minutes of the regular council meeting of June 3rd, 2024 as printed and circulated.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Oak, second by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 6. Thank you. Next one, number 8, please.
That the minutes of the following committees and or boards be received as presented to council. The Blue Water Recycling Association meeting highlights of May 30th, 2024.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries a 7. Thank you. Next item, please.
That South Huron Council receives a report from Mike Rolfe, Director of Building and Planning, Chief Building Official, regarding the review of a change of use for the Stephen Arena for information.
And a mover, please. Counselor Neeb, second by Counselor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Oh, sorry, is there a question? Oh, it's Counselor Vaughn. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to pull up the report. Can you give me a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Uh, Wrong report. Just give me one more second. Okay, my question is directed to Mike. So I'm looking at the our Ritz architect report. And on the second page of this report, right in the very first paragraph, it talks about, it basically says that the occupancy uses for that Stephen Arena are basically a hockey rink, broomball, floor hockey, inline hockey, figure skating, public skating, curling, and a roller rink. And the report goes on to say certain things that need to be brought up to building code to have more uses. Is that basically the essence of what we're looking at here tonight?
Mr. Rolfe, go ahead.
Through the mayor, that is correct. That is the essence. We do have Robert Ritz here virtually. He prepared this document. So if there's any questions regarding the report, Robert said that he would be happy to answer.
Okay, Mr. Ritz, are you there?
There I am.
Welcome, Mr. Ritz. And Counselor Vaughn, do you want to just speak directly to Mr. Ritz with your question, please?
Yes, but I think Mike.
I heard the question.
Oh,
Go ahead,
okay.
please.
Do you have anything to add beyond what Mike already said?
No, it's it can be used for what it is, but it can't be used for anything other than what it was originally designed for. It was never designed for a community events facility like having a buck and dough on the dance floor, because the building would require a sprinkler system and an upgraded HVAC system if you wanted to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? You're not seeing, oh, Counselor McLeod-Hagan, go ahead, please.
So in this report, it is showing the estimated value of what it would be to change this over to add the sprinkler system and the HVAC budget. Is this something that will be potentially looked at in the upcoming budget?
Mr. Rolfe, do you want to speak to that?
Through the mayor, that would be up to council to bring that forward if you wish us to look further into this.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Counselor Dietrich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can they not play broom ball or something like that in there as well as broom, or not broom ball, I mean, what do you call that? Pickleball, yeah. I think there's more concern about that than anything really.
Mr. Ritz, comment?
Pickleball, we looked at it. It's the number of people on the ice surface that sort of drives that. Pickleball also has nets. Right now, when you're on that ice surface, you can go anywhere without making a right turn. It's all, as I would say, the crows fly. So if you want to go to an exit, it's a straight line. Pickleball, you're going around corners and the occupant load would increase as a result, or travel distance would increase as a result. And also with pickleball, securing the nets, the posts of the nets to the ice surface would be very tricky, because that ice surface or the concrete, you can't really put anything in it because you could jeopardize the refrigeration system, the piping of it that's within that concrete slab.
Thank you. Counselor Rolfe?
And thank you. And so I guess today we have pickleball going on and there's no securing of the nets on the floor in the hall and the rec center. So there's lots of pickleball where there's no nets that are secured to the ground. So I don't
Also-
see the issue with that.
Okay, well, continuing on pickleball, I think I might have talked about ceiling height might be an issue as well, because the ceiling in that building is relatively low. And I think in pickleball, the ceiling height is required to be higher. And I'm trying to find that point in here.
And yes, in a legitimate pickleball court, yes, but it's significantly higher than what they're using today in our hall. So at that facility, so it's not the same as, say, the outdoor courts, obviously, but there would be significant. In my mind, if you can play hockey in the arena and you can use the ceiling for that, there's lots of height for pickleball.
Yeah, usually when you hit the ceiling in hockey, it's frozen, game stops. But in pickleball, I don't know the game at all. But in other facilities where we have it, they required a minimum ceiling height. And that's what I was going on, was the minimum ceiling height for that, badminton, tennis, other games that you could play on it if ceiling height wasn't an issue. So, and I didn't focus, as soon as I saw the ceiling height issue, I stopped checking pickleball.
I guess my question is as long as it was a sporting activity and like indoor soccer or pickleball or tennis or something else, could that not be used? And if the participants are okay with the height of the ceiling, that it could be used for those uses? Like, as far as I'm
Okay, well, I go
concerned,
into it, yeah, and right below where we talk about broomball as an existing building. No occupancy on the activity surface. And so similar facilities for such sports that get into lacrosse, indoor soccer, pickleball, 24 to 30 feet in ceiling height. We've got 15 feet in ceiling height. Can you use it? Well, it's limited. Yes, for again, numbers, the occupant load of an ice rink is 16 when you include the 12 and 4 when you include the referees. Pickleball is, I think we get maybe 6 courts on there at 2 each, 2 people per court. Would be 12. So you're within the occupant load of a hockey game. Lacrosse is similar to hockey as well.
So is there a legislative prohibition that doesn't allow that? I guess is the question you're probably looking at, Councillor Oak.
well, yeah, I guess my thought is if it's set up properly, I don't see why, because you say 12 for hockey. Well, when they're warming up, there's 40 on the ice at the same time warming up, 17 on each team and refs and so I don't see the issue.
You have a good point in that the rule is basically if it can happen in a hockey game, then it's hard for to really call it. It's the numbers. We can't get into the hundreds and 200s, and it has to be a sport. It can't be a community event where you dance or sit around and watch a stage performance of some type concert. Those would all be no's. But again, a sport is permitted on the ice surface. And our numbers have to stay within that sort of ice rink number. And a warm-up is a good example of where the numbers can be a little higher. Even public skating, the numbers can be higher.
Thank you.
It's just that the building was not built the code. Like when they did the original building, yes, but when the expansion happened, it crossed the line of becoming too big for the activity it is. When a building gets bigger, greater fire protection is required to the structure. And that line was crossed when the addition was added. And that's why I'm cautious of saying, yes, you can do it. And then, oh, yeah, we had 40. Well, hey, the building didn't conform to code in the first place, Ritz. So we're trying to work with and trying to keep the numbers within reason of an ice rink.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members of council? Not seeing any. Okay, oh, Councillor Need, go ahead, please.
Thank you through the chair. And just going back to the report, it's all about assembly occupancy. Have we had any requests to utilize that facility for events that require a lot more people than what is currently being used for?
Who would like to take that? Mr. Coulson?
To the chair, I don't have that information right now. I don't know. I anecdotally there likely have been requests, but I couldn't let you know exactly which ones.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions at all at this time? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ritz, for attending tonight, and thanks to our staff for answering the questions with Mr. Ritz, cooperation. And if there's nothing further, we'll move on to the resolution, please. We already moved and seconded, correct? Okay, if there's no further discussion, call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 6. Thank you. Next one, please. 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, and 9.4.1.
The South Huron Council receives a report from Stacey Jeffrey, Community Relations Manager, re-annual broader public sector, BPS, energy reporting for 2022 and 2023.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, second by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Councillor Dietrich, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the end of the day, what did we gain by this report?
Is Stacy online?
I am through you, Mayor Finch. So this report is actually required by the municipality to be completed annually. So we submit this data to the Ministry of Energy by July 1st annually. So we have to submit this information to them. So it's just putting it in front of council so you know what we are submitting.
Great, thank you. Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Stacy, for putting this together. One question I have on the Kirkton Woodham Community Center pool in 2022, natural gas is not available, obviously, but do we have to report the propane usage that was used there?
Ms. Jeffrey.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So yes, we do report the propane use. So one of the issues that we ran into is propane is not included in our LAS utility billing. So we're manually entering that data in. It's not a significant amount, but there will be eventually the propane total amount for 2022 entered into the reporting program. I just don't have those numbers finalized at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. We have a mover and a seconder. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 6. Thank you. 9.4.2.
That South Huron Council receives a report from Stacey Jeffrey, Community Relations Manager, re 5-year Conservation and Demand Management CDM Plan 2024 to 2028. And the South Huron Council approves the overall intent of the 5-year Conservation and Demand Management Plan 2024 to 2028 as presented.
Thank you. And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Yes, thanks for the report, Stacy. I have a question about the 15-page report. On page 5, there's a table that's talking about the summary of the 2023 corporate facility energy consumption and emissions report. And there's sort of the categories like energy, electricity, natural gas across the top. And in brackets, there's a little symbol, EK capital WH. What does that actually mean? Because when I look at your other report, especially when I'm looking at the natural gas column, those numbers are much bigger. So I'm just trying to figure out, what am I looking at here?
Ms. Jeffrey.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So EKWH is actually energy kilowatts per hour. So
The units for electricity and natural gas are different. So the LAS program energy planning tool that we use automatically converts everything so then it is comparable in a comparable unit.
Okay, so it converts it, like in the case of natural gas, from cubic meters to this EKWH.
Correct.
measurement.
Yes. So this unit is basically the energy per kilowatt hour.
Okay, and also there's some footnotes along the way as we're looking at some of these numbers that basically says some further investigations are required to determine energy savings on projects. And I'm because a lot of these projects are basically listed and there isn't a definitive statement about what we've actually saved. Yeah, guess I'm asking what further investigations are actually going to happen to determine where we are.
Ms.
Uh,
Jeffrey?
Through you, Mayor Finch. I apologize. That was a little.
I think we lost you, Stacy. Are you there? Are you there, Stacy? Okay. Her audio's dropped, so. Okay, so she's dropped out currently, so can't answer your question at this point, Counselor Vaughn. Would you like to maybe return to it later? I don't know what else we can do. Ms. Masuda, any comments?
We could move this report to further in, like later on in the agenda, and then move on and then catch up with it. If that's what council prefers, we can do that.
So just
That's-
defer that you're looking at?
Just move the
Sure.
agenda item.
Okay. How would you like to proceed? To what point?
That's fine with me. And we don't need a motion to move it around, do we, on the agenda? Do we?
If all of, I don't want to like step in front of the clerk, but if all of council agrees to move it further down in the agenda, let's try, oh, she's just rejoining, so we can just leave it as is.
Oh, okay.
Are you there, Stacy?
My apologies. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead. Glad to have you back.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Related to some of the unknowns at this time for energy savings. So a lot of those projects that are listed are actioned by multiple departments. So the actual information required in terms of different equipment is not always known. So let's say, for example, the road shed, they've replaced the lighting. So the specifics on it in terms of what they've replaced with, as well as, number of bulbs, things like that. That's a very detailed component of the project that we don't currently track. So to estimate energy savings for all of the projects listed would be a significant task for municipal staff to undertake at this time. It is not a requirement that we have a detailed estimate, or a detailed energy saving amount by the province. And you'll note in the report, that is why we have put in there about having an energy audit, someone who can then quantify what that energy saving is based on existing systems, as well as what they may be replaced with, and the details. So it is very complex to estimate. And I would hate to put a number to that we're pulling out of thin air. So I want to be sure that we're accurate with those energy saving amounts.
Councillor Vaughn?
Yes, thanks for that, Stacey. I was actually just asking and trying to get a sense of what further investigations we were actually going to make to determine estimated cost savings. But you just explained that that's a pretty complex, and some of these projects aren't exactly big ticket items, like a lot of LED lights I see. So it's just the footnote that captured my attention, that we were intending to do something in terms of further investigation, but maybe we're not. Would that be accurate?
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yeah, so like you said, some of the smaller items, it may not be worth it for staff or a consultant to invest their time into. But we would like to understand what the impacts of some of the larger projects may be, especially those that we're proposing within this 5-year conservation and demand management plan. So that would be a focus for sure. But yeah, some of the larger items that we've made significant investments in, I think it would be important to understand those further in terms of what the cost of implementation, as well as the energy savings. And that'll also help council understand the numbers better in terms of our energy annual consumption as well, and try and break those numbers down.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Jeffrey. Any other questions for Stacey before we let her go? Not seeing any. We have a mover and a seconder. There's nothing further. We'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Thank you very much, Stacey, for joining. And 9.4.3.
That South Huron Council receives a report from Julia Warwick, Director of Financial Services Treasurer, Re-Asset Management Plan 2024, and the Council adopts the Asset Management Plan 2024 as presented, and that Council directs staff to incorporate the financial strategy recommendations from the Asset Management Plan 2024 in future financial planning and long-term budgeting for Council's consideration.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Haggett. Any discussion? Councillor Oak?
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to break this up, this resolution. To have the first part as one item. And just some of the background of why I'm asking that is that the last section, I'm not sure if we want to incorporate this stuff, the recommendations, the percentages, because it sounds like we might already have those recommendations already in the Watson study and some of the other things that we're doing that are different than what the recommendations are in this asset management, like the 2% for the water rate and the 1.7 that they're already being included. So I don't know, it'd be like we're double counting these numbers. It's just my thought that it is something that before I would consider incorporating these in, I think we need also more of a wholesome discussion on the asset management plan versus the presentation strictly tonight too. So that's just my comments of why I'd like to split this up. I no problem with the report and the presentation tonight, but I think there's more discussion needed.
So go ahead, Ms. Stewart.
Through you, Mayor Finch, just to comment a little bit on the thought behind that last part of the recommendation. The thought was that it would kind of give us a starting point to present to council options come budget time, specifically for the tax rated ones we could present to council. In the report, this is the recommendation, this is what it would look like. We've done our internal analysis reasonability. These are some other options to present. Similarly, items like where the grant funding should go, the assets categories, it kind of gives us a starting point to present to council. But on the water and the wastewater side, they use the recommendations in this as part of that water and wastewater rate study. But as Nikki mentioned, that's more of a wholesome looking at operating future considerations. So that part is definitely more on the rate study side. But yeah, that's just a bit of.
Does anyone else want to split this up? Councillor Oak has expressed that. Councillor Vaughn?
Yes, I think it should be split out too. I'd like to have an opportunity to go through the report in a little bit more detail. It was a 180 or 168 page report, and I have to admit, over 2 or 3 days, no time to really digest that. So I would like to, yes, receive the report. I have no problem with that, but I would like to defer actually sort of adopting the financial ratios until we have that opportunity for a more fulsome discussion. I know that we have a budget basic kind of meeting every fall where we do talk about the asset management plan and about reserves and about debt levels and things like that. And so I'm just wondering if we can incorporate a more fulsome discussion and this part of the motion in a meeting like that.
Ms. Carlson, your comment?
Just to clarify the split, is it the first 2 paragraphs? So council will adopt the asset management plan as presented, and then the last paragraph is the one that is split out, just for clarification. Is that correct, Councillor Oak?
For sure, the first paragraph. The second one, I guess, does it need to be adopted before July 1st to qualify for the asset management deadlines that we have? I guess is the
That
question.
is correct, yes.
Okay, so then if that's the case, we're June 17th. So I would say then we split it the first 2. And then to Councillor Vaughn's comment that maybe the third one is deferred until the budget basic meeting in the fall. That I would agree with that too.
And Councillor Neeb, you had a comment? Oh, sorry. Julia, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Finch. I also just wanted to mention the 2025 regulation is July 1st. So we're starting on the 2025 asset management plan like right away next. So and that plan will be more involved in an actual plan of where we want to be, what we want to fund, how we want to get there. And that will all be happening around the same time, like budget discussions, all that. So just to give you a more fulsome, I guess, picture of what's to come and the kind of decisions that council will make with that next asset management plan. Whereas this one is just kind of, this is where we are. Not tying our hands to any strategies going forward for years to come, that kind of thing.
Great, thank you. I think that's key, not tying our hands. Councillor Oak?
Yeah, just and I have no problem with the plan. It's just the fact that, as Councillor Vaughn said, it's a detailed plan. The last time we had a big review of it was when the last deadline was done for the 2022, and there's been new council members added to council. That it would be good to actually maybe even have a committee of the whole on asset management to have a discussion separately from even the budget meeting to delve into it more.
Councillor Neeb?
Thank you through the chair. I mean, I've had time over the weekend to read over the plan. I think it's pretty straightforward given the age of some of our assets. And I think in past budgets, we've looked at asset management and looked at dedicating a certain percentage. I think it's 0.25%, if I remember correctly. I don't think this is putting anything written in stone by any means, but perhaps that last motion could read that this information could be presented at the budget basics meeting. I think that's kind of what I'm understanding the incorporating the financial strategy recommendations is providing the actual number of what that would look like for council consideration. And by no means I think we're actually going to achieve that number, but I do think it's worthwhile for council to have those numbers in front of them so that we can make a decision moving forward. So I'm fine with the third recommendation, but if we wanted to clarify that information would be presented at the budget basics meeting, I think that would be reasonable.
Okay, so let's deal with the first two paragraphs and perhaps we'll discuss that moving forward. So we just want to read those first two paragraphs, please.
The South Huron Council receives the report of Julia Warwick, Director of Financial Services and Treasurer, regarding the Asset Management Plan 2024, and that Council adopts the Asset Management Plan 2024 as presented. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor McLeod-Higgett.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. I have no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. And then Councillor Neeb, you wanted to change that third paragraph?
Thank you, through the chair, if possible, to just to frame it in terms of our budget basics meeting, perhaps, because I believe that's when that information would be presented anyway.
Very well, thank you. Mr. Carlson, comment?
Okay, then it could be Councillor Neeb, if you want to move a motion to defer the last paragraph there to the budget basics meeting.
Sure.
So moved. Is there a seconder for that, please? Deputy Mayor? Okay. And I'll let the clerk read that so we know exactly what we're voting on here.
So it'd be a motion to defer the recommendation to incorporate the financial strategy recommendations from the Asset Management Plan 2024 and future financial planning and long-term budgeting for council consideration would be deferred to the budget basics meeting in the fall.
Councillor Neeb, are you okay with that? Very well. And Deputy, you're okay with that? Very well. Any discussion? Call a question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Great. Okay, anything further on that? You're happy with that? Perfect. Okay, moving right along then. Mr. Carlson.
That South Huron Council receives a report of Alex Wolf, clerk, regarding the special event application, Exeter Ram Rodeo, and that the special event permit, Exeter Ram Rodeo, is approved in principle, and that the special event application and administration fee in the amount of $550 is waived, and that an exemption to the noise bylaw 6/2004 for Saturday, August the 10th from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. be approved, and that municipal staff provide assistance and resources as outlined in the special event application, and that South Huron Council declare the Exeter Ram Rodeo event to be municipally significant.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dietrich. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Next one, 9.4.5.
That South Huron Council receives the report of Kendra Webster, Legislative and Licensing Coordinator, and Alex Wolf, Clerk, Municipal Assistance for Privately Owned Operated Cemeteries, and that South Huron Council directs staff to proceed with the drafting of a framework regarding assistance for privately owned operated cemeteries to be brought back for council consideration.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor McLeod-Haggett, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Councillor Oak, Councillor McLeod-Haggett, since you moved it. Go ahead, sir.
Through you, Mayor. How many cemeteries have asked for financial assistance of the 8 that are active that are not part of us already?
Madam Clerk.
Through the chair, so of the we'll say the 9 cemeteries that are outside of the municipal's jurisdiction, but within municipal boundaries, we have heard from 5, 4 of which were active, 1 was inactive.
Follow up, go ahead.
And what level of services are they asking for us?
So through the chair, through preliminary conversations with members of the different boards, they're looking for some form of financial assistance to assist them with either upkeep, so ground maintenance, insurance coverage. There have been some inquiries about surveying of property as well as moving of headstones. There's nothing that I have heard at this point that would be a capital asset where they're asking for funds in order to install a niche, things like that. That's kind of what I've heard at this point.
And of those ones that you've spoke to, have any of them had the ask for us possibly to take them over?
Through the chair, at this time, in speaking with the ones who have been in touch, none of them have indicated that they're looking for the municipality to take over operations at this time. They have actually stated that they are interested in maintaining the cemetery governance at this time. They're just looking for some financial assistance. We have not received any actual formal requests. This is just preliminary discussions.
Councillor Oak and then go to Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Couple things. So the 5 that we've heard from, one of them reached out to us. The other ones, we reached out to all the other ones asking for their input.
Through the chair. So recently we had a couple cemetery boards, one of which was the Kirkton Woodham Methodist Cemetery Board, which staff council did direct that we proceeded the transfer. So that was one of the original requests. But yes, we did receive input from one of the cemeteries that came out mentioning that there are some financial restraints that privately owned cemeteries are dealing with, or other constraints. And at that time, staff did reach out to see if anybody had any input as to what type of constraints they are experiencing.
Thank you. Deputy?
Thank you. Has there been any dollar figures put on this? Like we've got a budget coming up here. How do we put a dollar figure on 5 here now? Not a request, but if the request comes down the road, how do we have a dollar figure there? Thank you.
Through the chair. So in just preliminary discussions, I've heard between $2,000 to $8,000 annually. It's kind of what I've heard the cemeteries would be looking for. Council does have the purview to continue as status quo. So if cemeteries did look for financial assistance, those could be dealt with on a case-by-case basis as they submit a formal request to council that could be brought to budget, and you could deal with each request at that time. One of the other options was to provide some sort of strategy wherein staff would kind of investigate what other municipalities have done. There are other municipalities within Ontario that have different programs available. Whether it's a set amount that council will set in the budget, and then you determine at that time how is that funds allocated to different cemeteries. That's something that staff could bring a report back on if council's interested.
Deputy, follow up and then Councillor.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to set aside some dollars in our budget somehow. I don't know how, maybe staff could bring back some kind of report to help us out with this, because right now I'm lost. Like, we're putting a lot of money into one cemetery already. I think we have to be careful that we make sure that the rest are, I'm not saying spend that kind of money, but at least have money available. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oak and then Councillor.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. So I would, in a perfect world, I'd like to see this resolution broken up into 2 as well. The first part, receiving the report. The second one, I'm a little bit nervous about asking staff to come back with a framework. Just the fact that there could be the request out there. I don't want to get back into the community grant business of picking one project. If you put a dollar amount of 10,000 and all of a sudden there's 15,000 comes in, how do you pick and choose which cemetery gets funding and not? And so we get into just the same type of issue that we used to go through with community grants that we got out of that business. So I'm just worried about that if we open it up, that's my concern. Especially when we've only had the one formal request and we agreed to take over the one cemetery. We haven't had anything that's come to council from any other cemeteries at this time. So I don't know if we're being too aggressive in this scenario.
Okay, thank you. Staff's looking at being proactive, but go ahead, Councillor Neeb.
Thank you, Mayor Finch, and I'm fully in favor of adopting a framework. I think at the end of the day, we have a number of volunteers that are running cemeteries, some of them active, and then I know there's a few that are inactive, but ultimately, if they can no longer operate those cemeteries, they become our responsibility, and they become even more expensive to manage than what it would cost to provide some support to these organizations. So I think what the framework is serving to do is to ensure that there's even expectation, and we're not again investing too much in one cemetery, but we're providing a certain amount of equity across the board, which I think is important in a framework. A case by case basis, we might not be able to do that, as it's, council could change, or circumstances change, but I think it is important that we provide some investment into these cemeteries, because again, it's it will be more expensive in order for us to operate them at the end of the day if these volunteers can no longer offer these cemetery services. So I'm okay with it being split, but I'm also okay with with drafting a framework. I think it's common sense, and it's a great way to move forward.
Great. Any other comments? Councillor Vaughan.
Yeah, so this sort of continues on to some of the questioning that Councillor Neeb had. I'm thinking in terms of should we ever be in a position where the churches or volunteers or owners of these cemeteries can no longer go forward because of financial constraints or volunteer constraints or whatever, and they request that the municipality take over the cemetery. Does the municipality have an obligation to continue to maintain that cemetery as active? Because I do see in the report that there's an awful lot of things you need to do, and resource intensive things you need to do to keep a cemetery active. And we have a number of cemeteries today in the municipal purview that are inactive. Only having Exeter as being our active cemetery. So if I'm trying to think of a future scenario here, that should someone come to us and say we no longer can look after it, would we as a municipality be looking at potentially declaring, can we declare that an inactive cemetery?
Madam Clerk.
Through the chair, so I can't quite answer that. What I can advise is the municipality, if a request were to come to the municipality in order to take it over, it would be up to the municipality to determine if they are satisfied with the information that they've received from the cemetery board. So I know with church cemeteries, they're older, so the Kirkton Methodist Cemetery is quite old, and for the most part was inactive, as most of the interment rights had been used. However, there are more recent cemeteries that are currently active that interment rights have been sold for, that have not been used yet. So staff would have to, I can't answer that question. I'd have to get the direct response from the BAO, whether we have the authority to just declare it as an inactive, or if you're obligated to continue as active.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sewell calls, any comments?
Through the mayor, I would just add on to what the clerk has said, that as Alex had said, the municipality would have to be satisfied that they could inter, like the location and positions of any plots, let's say. which can make it kind of challenging when the municipality hasn't had the records yet. So any kind of prepaid interments, the municipality does need to ensure that those happen. However, that is also balanced by the municipality also has to be assured that they know where the different plots are. So yes, the municipality would have to, but it might not necessarily be in that cemetery, depending on the records. The hope is that it would be in that cemetery, but it might not necessarily be so. It all depends, and it's a long process. So one of the, you'll note that the volunteers, most of them, they want to keep their own governance for that reason. But one of the other things that we have encouraged in discussions, or sorry, the clerk has encouraged, is that the records be updated and to start ensuring that they're compliant with the BAO so that their records are valid. So at a time when and if they do come to the municipality, then that's the best case scenario. So
And that's why we want a framework now then. Obviously, for all those reasons. Good. Any other questions then? Comments? We're gonna split this. Okay, Deputy, you have a comment? Oh, sorry. Do you want to read the recommendation, please?
That South Huron Council receives the report of Kendra Webster, Legislative and Licensing Coordinator, and Alex Wolf, Clerk, regarding municipal assistance for privately owned operated cemeteries, moved by Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Need.
Is there any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Carries with 6. Thank you.
That South Huron Council directs staff to proceed with the drafting of a framework regarding assistance for privately owned operated cemeteries to be brought back for council consideration. As that was split, moved by Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Need.
Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries, hands up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That carries with 5. Thank you. Okay, next item.
That South Huron Council receives the report of Rebecca Msuya-Collison, CAO, re-council priorities 2023 to 2026. And the council reaffirmed the priorities, goals, and the mission, vision, values, and pillars. And the council's decision-making framework be adopted and the departmental work plans be developed in accordance with these directions.
And a mover, please. Councillor McLeod Haggett, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Are there any notices of motions as you're aware of?
There are none.
Thank you. Items for discussion from the last meeting. The Danielle Zero from the South Huron Soccer. Comments, Councillor McLeod Haggett.
So I'm just wondering, have they, has there been any conversations with the Henslow District Co-op with what their plans are potentially with those fields, or looking into other fields within South Huron as a whole that they might be able to utilize?
Mr. Sue Colson.
There have been discussions on a high level, but I would suggest that staff be directed to come back with some information as far as speaking to stakeholders, including, HDC lands, really looking maybe at our community master plan, as well as the new Stadia report, doing a review of the existing fields that we do have in South Huron, and working with South Huron minor soccer on some of the information, like as far as the programming needs and the scheduling, and then more of a fulsome report coming back to council for next steps.
Councillor, you comment?
No, I just think that's a great idea. I think with the amount that they're growing, and again, looking further down the road with the population growth that we're anticipated to see over the next few years, it's worthwhile to make sure that we've got enough facilities available, and it's nice that we're able to partner with an organization that's already on the ground. So yeah, no, I think a report would be great.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, and I agree. The other thought also would be to contact the school board, because for years we used the high school soccer fields for soccer, for minor soccer. So and just see what their appetite for usage of the fields as well as other fields. as the partnership that that the municipality has with the school board on other activities with gyms and the arenas and stuff. Hopefully they can work with the soccer fields as well.
Okay, thank you. Someone make a motion to have a report, Councilor McLeod Haggett. And do you want to read that when we're ready? What's the details to it? Include municipal and private lands, is that correct?
That South Huron Council Director report brought back, outlining different opportunities, including a review of the Community Service Master Plan, reviewing municipal and private owned properties and speaking with stakeholders, including the school board for different opportunities.
So moved. Seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you. Number 2, Krista McCann. I just turned to Ms. Masula Coles and your comments on that.
The questions were for the CIO, as well as staff. They had mentioned the director, as well as possibly a member of council on a subcommittee. I would ask council if that you would authorize me to support the steering committee in an advisory, non-voting capacity as well, and as well to allow me to approve additional staff resources as needed to the subcommittee. I didn't want to have necessarily just one staff. There might be need of more, and also there is have to be cognizant on a departmental level on how much staff time can be approved. So if council feels comfortable allowing me to leave me the discretion for other staff and just authorize me, that's kind of what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you. And you'll move that, Councillor Neep. And do you want to prepare a recommendation for that, please, or motion?
The council authorized the CAO to support the South Huron Hospital Foundation Medical Center Project Steering Committee in an advisory non-voting capacity, and to authorize the CAO at her discretion to approve any additional staff resources to the subcommittees.
So moved, Councillor Neep. And a seconder, Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next item, new business. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to put my name forward as sitting on one of the subcommittees, at least that they were requesting a council member. Potentially, I would like to put my name forward if if council were to support that.
Okay,
That was a request that they also had that night as well.
Okay, very well. Is there any comments on that? And what committee are you referring to?
It would be that would be left up to the steering committee, I guess.
Okay. All right. So making that motion, do I read that motion, please?
That Councillor Oak be appointed to one of the South Huron Hospital Foundation Medical Center's subcommittees.
So moved. Councillor Oak. Seconder. Councillor McLeod Haggett. Any discussion? Councillor Vaughn.
Yes, I do know that Councillor Oak is interested in helping out with this hospital project. My only thinking on this is really around by putting a councillor on the committee, have we just put ourselves as a council in a position where we've created a committee of council de facto because we have a councillor representing us on that committee? I'm not too sure optically or even from an obligation perspective which masters we're following here.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering if somebody else can give an opinion on what they think about that.
No, I think there's truth in your comments there for sure. Any other comments at all? Okay, Councillor Oak.
The reason, one of the reasons is I truly believe in what they're looking at as far as this medical center. I think it's critical to our municipality. And I just thought it would be good to keep in knowing what is going on with the process sort of thing. So, and it help I'd bring back to council any things that might be looked at. So that's the only avenue. I see where you're coming from as far as if it's not the official steering committee, it's one of the subcommittees. It's different in my mind than the official driving steering committee itself.
Sorry, Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please, and then Councillor McLeod Haggett.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so when they did the presentation last week, if I remember correctly, in each one of both the steering committee and the various subcommittees, they were making a comment in there to the effect that information that was traded at these meetings was to be held in a confidential way, confidential nature, which kind of suggests to me that you as a counselor aren't really at liberty to disclose what goes on in those meetings to council without explicit permission. And that's kind of where I'm like, are we really putting ourselves in a boxy corner here? Because now you got a different master.
And the purpose of having Ms. Masuda Carlson on the committee is to bring back information, so we are up to date. Councillor McLeod Haggett, you had a comment?
What she just asked.
Very well, thank you. Councillor Oak, any further comment? So we have a mover and a seconder. There's no further discussion. Call the question, all in favor? And that carries, or that does not carry. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda here, go to new business. Was there anything on that? I believe so, Councillor Vaughn, no. Okay, and then we'll move on to Mayor and Councillor comments and announcements. Councillor Vaughn, I think you had your hand up for that.
Yeah, that's what I meant to raise my hand for. Yeah, I actually have three things I'm going to talk about. I'll go through the two kind of brief ones first. I did have the opportunity, as did others, to attend the South Huron Job Fair last week, and I got there at about 4:45, so there wasn't quite the attendance at that particular time of day, but I did hear from a number of people as I went around to the booths that it was pretty crowded when we first opened up between sort of 2 and 3:30. I also thought it was encouraging that some of the job seekers were actually up here from London, Ontario. Okay, and I don't really remember that kind of phenomena at the job fairs that we had pre-COVID. One of the other things that I was very impressed with was our own booth and the marketing effort that the staff put into with the pamphlet that was at your particular desk when you came in tonight. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at this, I think it really positions us well in the public eye with the way it was explained. And yeah, I was very proud to look at this piece of marketing. So, the other thing that I wanted to bring up was as operating as the ABCA chair on the weekend, I was invited to go to the official opening of the Warner Preserve, which is out in the sort of Grand Bend area. This is a natural area of 55 acres that ABCA has been very involved with in terms of helping Peter Warner and his late wife Esther plant a number of Carolinian forest type trees and a few hybrid experiments that they're actually trying, bringing up things like pecan trees from South Carolina that aren't really Carolinian forest, but because of the way climate change and the zones are changing, it's possible that we too can grow some of these kinds of trees in our environment up here in the future. So I just bring it up because it was a big kickoff, highlighting what the federal government has done in terms of the money they have put forward, what the municipality of Lampson Shores did over the past several years, 5 or more years, in terms of looking at that land, which was previously designated as settlement area for residential purposes, bringing it out of that and putting it more into this land preserve, which is to be enjoyed mostly on an educational level for students for years to come. And it's a protection of wildlife, wetlands, and creating a new forest. So I just thought on behalf of ABCA, I enjoyed representing them at that presentation. The other thing I wanted to talk about a bit was the FCM that I went to a week and a half ago, and just some highlights. I'm not going to go into details of 3 days of conference, but the theme on the FCM was redefining our future. And certainly we had a lot of sub meetings and plenary sessions that dealt with that. There was a record attendance at the conference. There was over 3,100 people that attended, and it's usually around 2,200. So that was a really significant jump, to a point that actually at the conference, Calgary had a lot of challenges in terms of the venues and the dinners and even some of the speakers. Like, I was not allowed to get into the room where Justin Trudeau was actually speaking because they ran out of room. There wasn't even standing room for some of them. So that was unfortunate on the one hand, but good on the other, that there was an awful lot of engagement from Canada at that conference. One of the highlights that I came away with was the big city mayors. They released their municipal growth framework paper. It's a really nice document that's talking all about how what
Recording in progress.
Saving, and they're more into travel than they are into married to the job and the white picket fence, and so they're finding that the occupancy, as soon as these are released to the market, the uptake is huge. Like, it's within a month, 90% of all of these studio apartments are actually rented, and they're very hard to source more. And so they're continuing along in that vein. Some alarm expressed over the continued loss of agricultural lands, and a lot of discussion about how lands are different in the West than they are in southwestern Ontario. Some shock from some other members across Canada that we in southwestern Ontario are allowing some of our lands to be chewed up to development of housing, and a general preference, they'd rather see everybody moving up and not out. So what can we do to end the urban sprawl? SRTs, STRs were also something that was talked about. It's kind of exacerbating the new housing initiatives that some cities are creating where they want usable residences, and they're finding that they're being bought up as investment properties. And so the discussion of what they're doing out in British Columbia came up as they're actually they've created laws out there that only allow for STRs in principal residences. So they're very restrictive in terms of they aren't allowing it for secondary homes that might be owned by a particular investor. So yeah, so that's just some of what I learned and I thought I'd share.
Thank you for the update. Any other comments from members of council? Councillor Neeb.
On June 20th, members of the Heritage Advisory Committee are putting on a heritage event, at the Exeter Legion. It's going to be put on by Eleanor Rath from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, and she's presenting on researching your property 101. So should be an interesting night. It's probably roughly about an hour, and it's at the Exeter Legion, 7 p.m.
Great, and I believe I'll be attending that too. Any other comments? Councillor Oak.
Just like to congratulate the Hospital Foundation for a great gala again this year. Raised $585,000 this year, and it was a great evening. And thanks to staff for the busy week they had that week between it and the other activities that were all going on at the rec center. So it was a busy week for staff. So thank you.
Great. So if there's nothing further, I can tell you that I was participating in the Discovery Week for the medical recruitment for the South Huron Hospital. We met with 2 doctors and great discussions with them, trying to encourage more medical professionals to come to South Huron. And earlier in the day, I was at the Grand Bend Area Health Center for their staff appreciation luncheon on the same day on June 4th. And again, they do great work back at Grand Bend, and we're all part of a bigger system, of course. On 10th of June, I was the reviewing officer for the 50th annual ceremonial review and change of command ceremony for the cadets here at the high school. They do an amazing job with those cadets. The Captain Rob Martin, I got to commend him for what he did over the past few years, and Captain Greg Barrows is the incoming commanding officer. Again, just wonderful work they do. And Rob Martin actually commented to me, the fact that we allow them to use municipal lands for their exercises saves them money for transportation, transporting these cadets to different facilities or different venues. And he says, you have no idea, what was his comment? You have no idea how much that means to us. And so the little thing like that for them to use the lands is just really benefiting them financially. So it was really good to hear. Other things I've been involved with is at the Huron Waves Music Festival Trailblazers this past week. And there's another event coming up next week on the 23rd. But the Trailblazers goes on for about a month, I believe. So, yeah. And
Did you play the guitar?
Did I play the guitar?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
That's too bad.
No.
I played the guitar.
You play the guitar? I should invite you next time. What else? Lots of different things on the go. And I was at the Warner Preserve. I would describe Peter Warner as a visionary. To have that insight, him and Esther, what they've done, it's just remarkable to preserve that 55 acres for indefinitely, creating that land trust and the partnerships he's created back there. No borders, no boundaries. It's all about community building. So yeah, he did an amazing job, and it was great to see the number of people that were out there for that day. That's about all I have at this point. So if there's nobody else that has any comments, we can move on to communications. Ms. Carlson.
14.1. 14.2. 14.3.
Okay, thank you. Go on to the resolution or recommendation, please.
That South Huron Council receives communication items not otherwise dealt with.
And a mover, please. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor McLeod Haggett. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carries with 7. Thank you. 15, there's no closed session, therefore no reporting out from closed session. Bylaw 17.1, please.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 34, 2024, being a bylaw to appoint an integrity commissioner and closed meeting investigator, and to authorize the execution of the agreement.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carries with 7. 17.2, please.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 35, 2024, being a bylaw to establish, ratify, and impose fees and charges for goods and services provided by the municipality of South Huron.
And is there a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Oak. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carries with 7. 17.3, please.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 36, 2024, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement with Rodeo Management Group, Inc. for the provision of the rodeo performances as at the 2024 annual Exeter Rodeo event.
And a mover, please. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dietrich. Any discussion? Councillor Vaughn.
Yes, I have a question about that. Okay, so this is an agreement between the Exeter Ram Rodeo as the producer, okay? And I'm wondering who is the Exeter Ram Rodeo? Is that municipality of South Huron, or is that a different kind of entity? Who is that?
Madam Clerk, do you want to take that, or Mr. Carlson? Either one. Okay.
Okay, where here it says Exeter Ram Rodeo, it should have municipality of South Huron, because the Exeter Ram Rodeo cannot enter into a contract. That's why the municipality of South Huron does. So
Right.
that amendment will be done before the agreement is signed.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, so that's good. That's what I thought, but it didn't say that. So the other question that I have is that there's an obligation to provide minimum coverage of 2 million in insurance for any claim. So that's us that have an obligation, I'm thinking, to provide that 2 million. Whereas the other party, and forgetting their name right now, is obligated for 5 million. And I'm just wondering why ours, the municipality, is less than that. Less than the 5. Like why the difference of 5 million for one party and 2 million for.
And historically, except I believe for 1 year, the municipality has covered the insurance costs for the rodeo itself. So it is the municipality that does cover the 5 million insurance.
So what's the reference to the 2 million then?
So the 2 million would be the actual rodeo management group.
Who's that?
The rodeo management group is the group that brings actually the rodeo to the municipality.
Okay. Okay. Still, I'm still trying to reconcile in my own head why we have a difference between a $5 million rider and a $2 million rider. Yeah, because we're basically giving each other indemnifications against any kind of claims. So if they have a problem or we have a problem, we're indemnifying each other away from having any liability. So I'm just trying to figure out why one's a $2 million limit and one's a 5. And why everybody isn't 5, put it that way.
Counselor Neep? question?
Sorry, from my understanding, this is just the contract and we are asked to have a minimum coverage of 2 million, but we already are covering it by 5 million, correct? So I think that's just what's included in their contract with whoever they're partnering with, if I'm understanding that correct. Or just complicating things even more.
Okay, where do we go from here then? Madam Clerk?
So through the chair, what I can advise in the past couple years, the Rodeo Management Group Inc. does provide the municipality with proof of insurance, listing the municipality as an additional insured for the 5 million. And I believe our insurance riders to cover, so theirs covers the event and their riders, things like that. And then ours would cover the committee members, volunteers.
So with what Councillor Neeb had to say in terms of a minimum of 2 million, we're de facto okay up to 5 million as well. Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. There's no further discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Next item, please. 18, please.
That South Huron Council gives first, second, third, and final reading to bylaw 37, 2024, being a bylaw to confirm matters addressed at the June 17th, 2024 council meeting.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Dietrich, seconded by Councillor Neeb. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. And 19, please.
The South Huron Council hereby adjourns at 8:18 p.m. To meet again on July 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. or at the call of the chair.
Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Neeb. No discussion. Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you very much. And thank you, Billy, for your services for the time you've been here. Wonderful job.